Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. And when Emily Young, a senior in college, wants to be elected as her sorority's president, she adopts a cute sloth, thinking it can become the new mascot and help her win, until a string of fatalities implicate the sloth as the main suspect in the murders. Yes, this is our raw reaction review for Slotherhouse. What a year it has been, Luke. I mean, for God's sakes, we have had everything from a cocaine bear to a cocaine shark, and now no cocaine, but a sloth-centric slasher film? Like, what is going on with this year, man? Like, 2023 has been so crazy with all these very, I want to say, out-of-the-box ideas.
Yeah.
And some of them, I would say, especially Cocaine Bear, surprisingly really good. We quite enjoyed that. We had a lot of fun with that one.
Yeah, and I think we're at this almost turning point in horror in a sense where, obviously the term elevated horror has been a thing, but I think we're also circling back to that kind of those interesting concepts from the 80s that you look back and say, whoa, what was going on there? And I think we're kind of getting to, especially with something, we talk about it on the podcast a lot. I think Malignant is been a big influence a lot with filmmakers. I think Barbarian just added to the fire there. And I think we're starting to see this kind of rollout of a lot of interesting concepts, a lot of unique things to say, hey, if you're a horror fan and you're in the space, you're either all in or you're all out. And I think we're really seeing, I think 2023 has been a pivotal year for that already. And we're only, we're not even to October yet.
Absolutely. And I mean, it even with just like the last film we just discussed on here was Subject. And, with that being another kind of found footage, found surveillance kind of horror film, it's been a very good year for, I would say, creature features and also, found footage movies. And this was something that I didn't see coming. I believe the image I use in the background here was the first thing I saw about it. And it kind of leads me to think that this is going to be, I expected a sci-fi original level kind of, direct-to-tubi CGI sloth film where it was going to be some big monster sloth in the jungle killing people. And, the trailer comes out and I'm looking at it and I remember I texted you and I said, did you take a look at this? Like, this is fucking wild. Like, this sloth doesn't look half bad, and the movie took a drastically different approach than I was expecting. And so, me being a creature feature fanatic and having to do my due diligence here, I got on the old IMDb Pro and I looked up Matt Goodhue, who directed this, and of course reached out to the film's PR team, and they were so gracious enough to they were working with Gravity Ventures, who we worked with previously. They sent us a screener as well as an interview opportunity. So we got to see this one a bit early. And Luke, with all of the setup out of the way, what are your reactions to the Slotherhouse?
Well, going back to when you first brought this to my attention, I did see like a little article, how those blurbs pop up in your Twitter X feed, whatever you want to call it, a Bloody Disgusting. I think they were the first ones to really cover, at least from my perspective. And, I didn't watch it at first, and then you sent it to me and I was like, okay, let me take a look. And I watched that trailer, and I think that's something where the production value here really did blow me away, because like you're saying, you're expecting some sci-fi original kind of aspect to it, but honestly, like watching this film, it feels like a real film. You can tell there was a lot of care taken into it. There are some really interesting shots, I think, through that camera lens, and from that I was really surprised. So I think from a production standpoint, I think this surpassed my expectations. From a concept perspective, I think I left a little underwhelmed, to be honest.
Okay, totally fair. And, for me, I went into it seeing the trailer, again, still being a bit optimistic about the, production value that they put on display. I know a big talking point for us off air was, again, the practical effects that they were using for the sloth, which is going to probably be a huge point of this review for us. But it is one of those things where I was still under the impression that it was like, okay, maybe they just showed the best shots in the trailer. Because, films, they've done that. We've seen things where they look better in the trailer and then you watch it and you're just like, this just doesn't feel as high concept or as highly produced as the trailer made it seem. And that's the signs of a good trailer. Although it's our buddy Stephen Lamort, the Mean One, did that very well, where the trailer felt very high concept, and then you get into the film and you realize that it's a little bit of a lower budget than we were anticipating. And yeah, I gotta say, I think I went into this very low expectations, and I was quite surprised with how much I found myself grinning ear to ear watching Slotherhouse. I was expecting this to just kind of be a run of the mill. We're going to cover it for the meme so we can get to say we watched Slotherhouse on the channel. And I walked out of this or finished watching it, and I just sat back and I said, that hit a certain tinge for me that I have not felt in a long time. I am not sitting here saying that this movie is breaking any barriers. It's not the most incredible thing I have ever seen. It is very much, if you want to look at it, a B horror film. But I think the fact that it wears that on its shoulder, and the fact that you can tell that there was at least a little bit more care in the production, especially when it comes to the creature effects, that it won me over. I saw this and I didn't even realize it was PG-13 until I was like right before the interview. And I sat there and I genuinely felt like this is a really fun gateway slasher film. I think, with films like The Munsters and things like that, where it's like, we talked about that as being a good gateway to like the classic Universal monster films. This feels like a great film to show a younger kid who is kind of showing interest in, like the Friday the 13th or, the Prowler and stuff like that. Stuff you would never show to a child. I mean, Friday the 13th, maybe. I was shown that. But, we're not talking about that. We're talking about Slotherhouse here. And I was very surprised with just how much I enjoyed this movie.
Yeah, I mean, from a gateway horror aspect, I think, going into it, I think it can be intriguing for, a younger kid that's getting into horror to watch without it being overly offensive. Now, something like this, I couldn't help but get something like a Gremlins vibe, and I think Gremlins has a little more intimacy to it, whereas this one, I appreciate the production value. I think maybe the gimmick of how many things popped up on screen so much with the texting and the hearts above people. I think maybe that kind of took me out of it for a little bit. I think that gimmick kind of ran its course for me about 30 minutes in. And then looking at the film, I guess for me, I expected more of a thrill ride. I think this film, from my perspective, tends to take a little time to get going, and I don't know necessarily if it fully gets to my expectation of what I thought this was going to be. Now, I know you mentioned Cocaine Bear at the very beginning. I think that's a film where, at the very beginning, we get moving, and it's going. Whereas this one, I timed it. Kills happen a little bit later in the film than I felt. I felt like this was more of a sorority movie than a sloth slasher film, I think. And I think one of the big things is when you're creating a killer sloth, you're coming for the sloth and you're coming for the kills. And honestly, for me, I think maybe that there's one notable kill in here, but the other ones are really pretty much basic for me. And, some things happen off screen or they're extreme close-ups of the sloth doing the action. And it was something for me where I was like, I'm not expecting magic here, but I'm expecting something that's going to be at least memorable and like how you're saying, grinning ear to ear, where it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that they did that. I didn't really get that anywhere in this film, but except maybe, and I'm saying, it's just a glimmer. It didn't really satisfy my hunger for what I thought Slotherhouse was going to be. So for me, it kind of left me wanting more. And then, again, I think they spend a lot of time on, oddly enough, like sorority politics, which I wasn't really prepared for here. There are a couple big moments in here that I was like, okay, we're really spending a lot of time on the kind of hierarchy of our sorority. And, one of the things is, and I know this isn't the biggest budgeted film in the world, but, I think when you gift us a premise of a college campus, I think maybe I was expecting that we were going to leave the sorority house a little bit more. And, we've all watched slasher films where kills are happening outside of where the main action's going to happen is once we really get into that third act. But we didn't really leave there that much. I mean, occasionally we did, but again, I don't think we felt anything really memorable as we do leave that location.
Yeah, and I think those are all very fair criticisms. I could easily see a lot of people, especially people who kind of are going into this maybe expecting it to be a little bit harsher than it was. Again, I could have been sold that this was going to be an R-rated film, up until I started watching it. And again, I didn't know it was PG-13, but for what the film presents itself, I don't know why, but I just really think that this just struck a chord with me. And I think, just out of all the things that we've seen recently, I just found myself having more fun with this. And I'm still genuinely just surprised myself. Like, I'm trying to wrap my brain around just what exactly put me in that. And the closest thing I can come to, and it's probably the biggest thing I want to highlight in my review, is I adored the Sloth Alpha. I thought that was such a fun practical effect. I thought that it looked great for what it was, because it borderlines that cheesy uncanny valley nature, but still is convincing enough that it was just like, when things would happen to Alpha and stuff, I would feel a little bit bad. And I think the opening is great. I loved the opening to this film, and I think that for my money's worth, I think I got enough sloth action for me personally. But I do agree with you that would I have loved to see an R-rated Terrifier 2 kind of cut of this film? Absolutely. I'd love to see the sloth just going absolutely bananas on these people. I would have loved to have seen them go to like classrooms and, other parts of the college campus. But, again, I think that this was just a very self-contained story. And, I think they were working within their budget. And I think for what it is, it again presents itself as just a very fun kind of homage to those like House on Sorority Row. Again, I said The Prowler, where it's like it's a really a nice introduction to the slasher genre, in my opinion. Like, I just think that, it seems like for you and I, there's one film a year that we can kind of say is more of a nice introduction to like horror. And I think Slotherhouse is that for me this year. I genuinely find myself again grinning ear to ear. Maybe on rewatches I'll kind of get off the high a little bit, but I gotta say I had a lot of fun with this movie.
Yeah, and going into this, I did know it was PG-13. I had looked it up prior to watching it. And I don't even necessarily need a gore fest. I mean, we're biased, so I mean, more gore the better. We're not gonna be too picky on that. But looking at something like a Megan, where there was this whole unrated R-rated cut, whatever, and then it came out, didn't really add too much. I think they made an effective play for that PG-13, and it worked. It didn't take anything away that it wasn't rated R. And this one, I don't know necessarily if I needed that rated R. I mean, hey, I'm not going to complain if it was, but I just think if you load this up with more creative kills and take your time a little bit better, I think this would have been more effective for me. I think, one of the sticking points for me is there is a sequence that is a montage of kills. And I was like, we're really hammering this out real quick. And, I would have loved to be more so less is more approach, where it's like, let's take our time and really think out these kills and make the most of them, which I feel like, for me, like I said, there's only really one that sticks out a little bit more than the other ones for me. But other than that, it doesn't really, I think honestly, after watching this, I'm probably going to file it away and honestly forget that I watched this until, the end of the year as we're talking about it. In like looking at it, I'm not coming into Slotherhouse expecting a perfect film at all. I knew what I was getting into. I was expecting a little more than what I thought I was going to get. I was ready to, my feelings on Malignant, Barbarian, things like, those are films that make me love that space. It's like you're either all in or you're all out. And I was ready to be all in on Slotherhouse. And I don't think it really reached that for me. I think I struggled a little bit with the tone, because it is comedy and they take that approach, a lot of the dialogue here looks like it was, if someone told me that the script was written in 2010 and hadn't been touched since, I would totally believe you. And then there are things where I assume they were playing for an earnest feeling, in a sense. There's almost a weird tone. It's supposed to be, I think, serious in between. It takes place in a hospital room, and for me, I was like, am I supposed to be taking this serious, or is this supposed to be seriously a joke? You know what I mean? So I wasn't really sure what the tone they were going for, because it did seem out of place, because things are so jokey that anytime they try to inject any sort of seriousness, it feels a little off-putting for me. It doesn't really fit the tone. So yeah, I struggled with this film, to be honest. It's something that, will I go back and rewatch it? I'd be hard pressed to say that I would. Going into that sloth practical effect, I think that was great. I wish it was used a little bit more, and in different ways. But I think they did make use for what they did. I was just hoping for a little bit more here.
Yeah, I think that's, again, totally fair. This is definitely going to be, not everybody's cup of tea, especially in the horror space. But I think that if you go into this and, you're ready to just understand that it is not that gore fest. It's going to hold back. It's going to feel a bit more like, I think one of the things I had said to you off air was it felt a lot like a like you said, a mid, like 2010 script. It does feel like something from the mid 2000s. It feels a little bit like some of those direct to DVD American Pie films, tone it down on the language and nudity, but it gets those vibes to it. And I there might be a little bit of a nostalgia rush there. Again, I think the practical effect, it just had me smiling all the way through. And, I think that it's just something that I kind of didn't necessarily know what I was going to get. Again, I'm a lover of creature feature films. And, this one, I went in totally expecting for, again, it to be just a sci-fi original level film. And I think I got a little bit more, and I think that carried it a little bit more for me than it did for you. And, I think that's totally fine. And I'm going to say that at the end of the day, I think that if you give this film a chance and you just go in having both of our perspectives here, and really assess just kind of the film you're walking into, I think that Slotherhouse can slash its way right into your heart. I think that it's a fun film. I think that again, the practical effect is great. And I ultimately think that overall I will go back and revisit this. So who knew that Slotherhouse was going to be the film that divided us so heavily here? But hey, that's it. That's, again, the horror space. That's filmmaking, baby. Like, I think that it's just always seems to be these kind of like gateway horror films that kind of get Luke and I differing opinions. And I'm just happy to be on the other side for once. I feel like I'm such a negative Nancy when we come to the kind of lighter stuff. So it's like, I'm happy to be here. I will stand Slotherhouse, and yeah, that's what I'm in.
Yeah, and for me, I think going into this, if you're intrigued by the novelty of Slotherhouse, I would say maybe pull back those expectations, so maybe you'll be surprised, because I think I was expecting a little bit more in terms of that novelty. I think they didn't lean enough into it. I would have loved to have seen, again, some crazier kills, a little more screen time with Alpha the Sloth, because it is a great practical effect. Coming down to recommending this, I think, if it ends up streaming, I would definitely, at least check it out to see, if it piques your interest of that a slasher sloth. Hey, I think it's worth a watch. It is certainly the best slasher sloth film that I've ever seen. Yeah, if this does intrigue you, don't let my review deter you. Go out there, you check this out, because hey, they got the film made, they got something out there, and it does add something unique to the space.
Absolutely. Well, Slotherhouse slashed its way into my heart, and I hope it slashes its way into yours. But again, if you side with me or you side with Luke, you're not wrong either way. These are just movies, and these are just our opinions. But either way, check out Slotherhouse this coming Wednesday, August 30th, for one night only. Tickets should be available right now for you guys to check out. And, again, I think that it's going to be a divisive film. And I think that, you are probably going to have a lot of people that are like us, that are in one camp or the other. But I don't think that Slotherhouse needs to be the film that turns into the next great Twitter debate of like, you know, the Halloween ends or anything. Like, I'd be really upset if people started getting at each other's throats over this film, because again, I can understand it's not Shakespeare, but I had fun. And, you know, I think a lot of people who are going to go there and see it opening night are going to have fun. And, you know, again, if you are on the fence about it, yeah, wait for streaming. I totally support that, because it's like, so you're not going to have to wait that long. And I think that, you know, it could surprise you, but again, could be totally off base. But other than that, guys, we got a lot of great stuff on the channel. Let us know what you thought of Slotherhouse. You know, we got things like our review of the film Subject, which is on Screenbox right now. It seems to be doing really well for itself. A lot of people are picking up on that movie. Yeah, so I was a little bit surprised by that, because again, it just was something that felt like it was going to fly more under the radar for me. But I think the reviews have been positive, and I think that word of mouth is climbing. So I'm happy for that.
And Screenbox has got a great track record. I think they do a great job of building that intrigue for their films that are coming out, and I think Subject is no different.
Absolutely. And then other than that, we do got a lot of great stuff on the way. Of course, more announcements coming on the channel. Bear with us here, guys. We're just waiting for, you know, one more pen to drop, and then I think we can finally come out and let you guys know what we've been hiding from you for so long. But, you know, it's exciting stuff nonetheless, and we got a lot of great stuff coming to you guys, as well as more reviews and other things in the pipeline. So stick with us here on Splattercast. Hit that subscribe button. We just recently crossed 1,000 subscribers. Cannot be understated enough how much we appreciate you guys for that. And yeah, I guess that about wraps us up. So until next time, I am Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.